Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 in Treaty 3 territory. The members of the panel today, my name is Ian Mann. I will be the chair. Joining me on Zoom, panel member Gail Anderson and Brent McIntyre, also panel member. Clayton Daichun will be our assessor, and he is joined with Matthew Rokas as well. Stephen Lunn will be our hearing secretary today. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are being made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the applications of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all the applications have been heard. The board will then deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items today 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on the docket. Mr. Lund, please affirm the assessors and the applicant's testimony.
Mr. Daichun, please state your full name.
Clayton Daichun.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
You, Mr. Barokas, please state your full name.
Matthew Barokas.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, if you please stand. And please state your full name.
Chris Thorne.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Are there any preliminary matters on the first item at 817 St. Mary's Road that need to be addressed? Mr. Daichun?
Nope.
Okay, Mr. Thorne, any preliminary matters before the, then Mr. Daichun, if you could please lead us through your presentation with respect to 817 St. Mary's Road, with the reference date of April 1st, 2018.
Okay. File number 224842, roll number 0800187600. The address is 817 St. Mary's Road. Roll year 2021, reference date April 1st, 2018. Assessed values at $1,453,000. We have a recommendation using our NOI of 61,028 and increasing the cap to 4.75%, bringing the value to $1,285,000.
Mr. Thornton, were you aware of this recommendation?
No, I wasn't. I didn't see it in the report.
Okay, and did you want to accept it? Did you want to consider it, or would you like to proceed as?
I came all the way down here. I'd like to do my presentation.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Mr. Dutchin. Would you continue, please, with your presentation?
Sure. It is one building, 2 stories high, built in 2020, with 6 suites and 6 outdoor parking stalls. You look on page 3, it's the income value summary showing 6 2-bedrooms at an average monthly rent of $13.74.13. Continuing on to page 4 is the rent comparables for the property. So I tried to find some similar suite mixes in the area, built roughly around the same time. You can see that it falls near the end of the range for average monthly rent per unit. Continuing on to page 5 is our cap rate evidence. As you can see under the multifamily section, ranges from 4.03 to 5%. And then continuing on to page 6 is the cap rate table, showing the 20th percentile to the 80th percentile for the cap rates. Page 7 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 8 is just some description of the property. You can see that it says designer kitchen, custom cabinetry with soft close hardware, quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, tile backsplash. So you can see that's kind of its higher end finishes in the building. Continuing on to page 9 and forward are the pictures of the building. As you can see, some interior pictures of the finishes, the stainless steel appliances. As you can see, it's very nicely done. And that is my evidence.
Thank you. Mr. Thorne, have you any questions for the assessor, Mr. Dykshin?
No, I think I'll kind of address it during my presentation.
Okay. Yeah. Ms. Anderson, any questions for the assessor?
Yes, my question pertains to the adjusted cap rate that is included in your recommendation of 4.75%. So what factors can you advise went into considering the change in the cap rate?
I just felt that it was slightly on the lower end for this type of building in this area.
Yeah. So 4.2, if you go to our table on page 5 with some examples, in terms of the newer properties, what we're seeing is, if you're looking at the third table down, 333 Ward is the only newer one, 5%. That one was built in 2006. This one is newer than that. It also has a smaller amount of units. When you have a property that has a smaller amount of units and as a result a lower price point, what happens is smaller investors, the non-institutional investors, couples, friends, families, they can put money together and they can get in on the action on bidding on these types of properties. So as a result, there's an increased pool of potential purchasers. As such, with more demand for this type of property, the cap rate is going to be a bit lower. That's why it's a bit lower than the 5%. That combined with it's newer.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Also, my second question is, do you have a building permit on file? Evaluation of a building permit?
I could double check, but it's not in my evidence.
Okay. Okay. My other question is, did you inspect the property?
I personally did not know.
Is it noted when the last inspection of the property is? No?
It probably would have been inspected when it was added to the roll. I would assume. I'm not too sure though.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Those are all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
Just one question. Clayton, was the 2021 a supplementary assessment?
Yes.
And what was the effective date?
You have to open it.
Yeah, I would have to.
Check permits.
I'd have to double check. So if you give me 1 second here. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second here. Or this might not work.
Well, that's okay if you can't find it easily.
Just go to that.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah. Now it's loading. This is the- Yeah, I'm not able to find it.
Well, that's fine.
Give me
That's
one
all.
more minute, I could get it for you. Address finally decides to load up.
Mr. McIntyre, did you want to pursue that or did you want to move on?
No, I think we should just move on, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I was effective, oh, sorry, June 1st, 2021.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you. I have a question with respect to the cap rates that are presented on your page 5 with respect to the multifamily. These
Mhm.
cap rates are calculated how?
These would have been calculated with a 3-year stabilization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
taking 3 years of income and expenses leading up to the date of the sale, stabilizing them, and then using that stabilized net operating income with the known sale price, and then calculating the cap rate that way.
And the stabilized income and expenses was received from these owners or from these properties or the representatives of the properties in response to the mailers?
That's correct.
Yeah,
Is that where you received that information? Okay, thank you.
Correct.
That's all I have. Mr. Thorne, your presentation, please.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure where I'm supposed to look here, but.
The cameras are both there and above me, so
Okay, well, I'll just.
whatever
I'll just
is
speak to you.
comfortable for
Okay,
you.
perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I understand the city has a difficult job. They need to assess every property in the city of Winnipeg. And they use a mass appraisal computer model, so there's some difficulties with that. Obviously, their valuation model was provided to me. And I'm not disagreeing with any of the income and expense information used. Seems to be very in line with my sort of actual income and expenses for the property. So this will be a fairly short discussion. I'd like to focus on the cap rate that was used to capitalize the income. So I guess they've proposed a new cap rate of 4.75. I still think that's a little bit low, and I'd just like to sort of touch on some of the comparable properties that they've used and the difficulty in using some of these properties and sales, I guess, as a basis for their cap rate justification. Okay, so I guess, sorry, the thing to focus on is sometimes you can't always take this data at face value. There's more to the sale than meets the eye. And I know this having been a part of some, not these transactions, but having been a part of some similar transactions. So 191 Roche Street, I'm looking at the city's evidence. This is page 5. And then the third table with the multifamily information. So they have the sale of 191 Roche Street. This property was built in 1971, so that's 50 years ago. Not a great comparison. It's 36 suites, They might offer a number of amenities at this building. That a 6-unit building just can't offer. And the cap rate too, so on a lot of these transactions. Especially with older buildings, typically the rents are under market. Because of rent controls, so investors, and I've done this in the past too, is investors are willing to pay a little bit more for the property because they know there's upside and there's ability to do a renovation where they're able to then turn around and increase rents by $400 or $500 a month. So they are willing to pay buyers for a little bit of this upside because they know there's still enough upside for them to capture as well. So just as a quick sort of thought exercise here, all things equal, why would any investor pay, I mean, a 4.03 cap, a 4.4 cap for a building built in 1965 or 1960 compared to a 5 cap for a property that was built in 2006 in what I would say is a superior area? So I think the obvious reason for that would be there was a value add opportunity. And there is no value add opportunity with my building. It's a brand new building. Rents are stabilized. And the cap rate needs to be done on a sort of stabilized basis and not these sort of low value add cap rates that you're seeing here. And I would be curious to know if any of these properties like 191 Roche, 394 Talbot, 285 Maxwell, if they transacted later and what the stabilized cap rate would look like. And I suspect it would be quite a bit higher. Okay, and I just like to look at 333 Ward, which I think is the closest in age to the subject property here, 817 St. Mary's. So it's sold at a 5 cap. I looked this property up online. It has tons of amenities, which I believe make it a superior building to 817 St. Mary's. Just from their website, they have, these are things that my building does not have. It has balconies, convenience stores, elevators, an exercise room, a fitness room, a rec room. So you can get the picture. If you're a resident and you're picking between my property and this other property, all things equal, I think you pick the building with more amenities. Therefore, my building should have a higher cap rate. So I guess essentially what I'm trying to say is there's no good comparables with an emphasis on the word comparable. There's nothing comparable here. So in the absence of reasonable comparables, I think we have no choice but to rely on these capitalization rate reports, which they're tracked over the years for stabilized properties in the city. They're done by Colliers, CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield. So this is what the city has on page 6. And for low rise A, and I'll say, yeah, my property is certainly A class. The range they suggest is between 5.5 and 6%. So what I'm proposing is a cap rate of 5.5%. So on the lower end of that range, the 5.5 to 6, which would result in assessed value of $1.15 million. Yeah, that's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Deitchen, any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. This property has a sister property next door to it, correct?
Correct.
Are you the owner of this property?
Yes, I am.
Is it true that those two properties are conditionally sold for $3.6 million right now? So about 1.8 each?
Would that be a post-reference date thing?
Yes, I think that's post-reference information that we're not going to consider.
So I don't know, like, I mean, I put it this way, anyone can list the property for sale for any price that they want. Until it's sold, it doesn't mean anything.
Okay, but it
And
says
it's also
conditionally sold.
post-reference date.
Yeah. Do you have any sales in particular that the board can review for cap rates?
I don't have access to that information. I understand the city has access to all of this information. So I'm just going by what I have access to. And that's the information I have.
No further questions.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions. They've been asked and answered. Thank you.
And I have no questions. That concludes the first matter at 817 St. Mary's Road. We can move on to item number 2 on the list, please. Also 817 St. Mary's Road with the reference date now of April the 1st, 2021. Mr. Deitchen, can you please lead us through your presentation?
File number 224843, roll number 080018766000. The address is 817 St. Mary's Road. Roll years 2023, reference date April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is at $1,644,000. I also have a recommendation for this property with our NOI of 63,275 and increasing the cap to 4.5%, brings the value to 1,406,000.
Sorry, could you give me that valuation again, please?
$1,406,000.
Thank you. Mr. Thorne, were you aware of the recommendation?
No, I was not.
And is it something that you would like to consider, or should we continue the presentation?
Let's continue.
Mr. Deitchen, would you proceed with the presentation, please?
It's same information, one building, 2 stories high, built in 2020 with 6 suites and 6 outdoor parking stalls. It is 6 2-bedrooms at an average monthly rent of $14.62.42. Page 4 are the rent comparables again. Again, try to find some in the area built around the same time. You can see that falls near the low end of the average monthly rent per unit. Page 5 is the cap rate evidence. And as you can see, it ranges from about 3.6 to 5.74% for the properties. And then continue on to page 6 is the cap rate table for our model cap rates. Continue on to page 8 is the same information. Again, it's the higher end finishes with quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances. And page 9 forward are the same pictures as before. And that is my evidence.
Thank you. Mr. Thorne, questions for the assessor?
No, again, it'll sort of be addressed in my presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Mr. McIntyre?
And I have no questions. Thank you.
I have a question with respect to the table as shown on page 6, the capitalization rates. The city of Winnipeg shows the 20th to 80th percentiles. The Colliers, CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield, do those also reflect the 20th and 80th percentiles, or are those reflective of a different range, or do you know that?
I believe that's just their range, what they're saying the low to highest based on the information that they have.
Okay. Thank you. That was the only question that I had. Mr. Thorne, would you like to give us your presentation, please?
Right, so again, focusing on the same thing, the cap rate, income and expenses look fine for the property. But I think just again, there's some issues with the comparables that were used for the city's cap rate evidence on page 5 there. So I guess looking at the first one, 2390 McPhillips, it's the closest in age to 817 St. Mary's Road. But again, very difficult comparable property to use. If this were an appraisal report, it would not be used because it is not a comparable property. 6 units versus 90 units, it's just not a fair comparison. Again, way different class of building, way better amenities. I looked online again, they have a games room, they have an elevator. All of the suites in 817 St. Mary's are walk up and accessed by stairs. There's balconies, my building doesn't have balconies. And I would, I guess, disagree with the earlier point made by the assessor that smaller properties transact at lower cap rates. I would say larger properties typically transact at lower cap rates. There's economies of scale of operating a larger property. You're dealing with institutional investors who have access to cheaper capital. I'm feel like I'm qualified to speak on that as I'm in the space and I'm seeing these deals transact, and it just doesn't line up with reality about the lower cap rates for the smaller buildings. Okay, so the next city comparable I wanted to look at was 700 St. Mary's Road. This is the closest comparable that I saw in terms of the location to my property and then the number of units. So it's nine suites, and it's just down the road. So again, though, this is a clear example of a buyer overpaying because of the upside in raising the rents. So I went online, I found some previous rental ads from 2016 for this property. So they're advertising 2-bedroom units for rent at $760 a month. Very obvious, these are below market rents. I'm willing to bet a lot of money that any buyer could possibly raise these rents by at least $500 a month by doing renovations. So this property certainly would not stabilize at a 3.6% cap rate. I won't spend too much time on the next 4 properties. I mean, they're 40 to 60 years older. They're significantly larger. I don't think they're good comparables. 1745 Henderson. Again, this is the last one here, way larger. It's 110 suites, but I thought it was interesting. So I looked at Google Street View. It was a low cap rate, 4.28%. There was a sign on the front lawn from the Street View picture in August 2022. There was a sign from a credit union saying project financing by Access Credit Union. So it's again clear that, you know, this property was purchased and there was some sort of a renovation scheme here. So people aren't paying a 4.28% cap for a stabilized property. So again, I think in the absence of reasonable comparables, we have no choice to rely on these capitalization rate reports. So I'll go to page 6 of the city's report. So again, looking at low rise A from multifamily. One thing I noticed about this table was the city didn't provide, they provided the 20th and 80th percentile, but they didn't provide the low end and the high end, which they did for the 2023 assessment year. So I thought that was a bit strange, but I suspect this would have been on the lower end. I also noticed, okay, so Colliers actually did have a cap rate report for Q1 of 2021. I submitted that with my evidence. It suggested a range of 5 to 6% for low rise. And the other one that's here is for CBRE, it's 5.25 to 5.75. So again, I think a cap rate of 5.5% is reasonable on this one again. Yeah, the rate the city is suggesting would put me again in the bottom 20th percentile of cap rates in the city, which I don't think is reasonable. So the cap rate of 5.5% would yield assessed value of $1.15 million. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Thorne. Mr. Deitchen, any questions for Mr. Thorne?
Yeah, we just have a couple of questions. So you're relying on the Collier's cap rate range of 5 to 6% and coming up with your determination of 5.5. Is that correct?
Well, both that and then the CBRE cap rate report, which you had provided in your evidence as well.
Okay, so just looking at the property, 5.5, that's about halfway between 5 and 6, correct?
Correct.
Is it your contention that your property is the average property, the average apartment in the city?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's a stabilized property and it should get a stabilized cap rate, not a value add cap rate.
So on a year built perspective, your property was built in 2020. Would that be newer than average or older than average?
I would guess that's probably newer than average.
Okay, so did you put any weight on that in determining your cap rate?
Yes, I did.
What sort of weight would that create? Downward movement in the cap rate or upward movement in the cap rate if you're looking at 5.5 as a starting point?
Yeah, it would create, well, it would create downward movement being a newer property. But I'm saying if there's newer properties that are quite large and have better amenities, they would be on the lower end of that range. So that's why I thought it would be reasonable to put this somewhere in the middle.
What's the vacancy rate of this property? Is it fully occupied?
I don't have, well, I believe it's fully occupied now, but it's sort of post-reference information. We've had vacancies here. I don't have that information offhand.
Is the property in good condition or is it suffering from any sort of deferred maintenance?
Well, it was built a few years ago. It doesn't have any deferred maintenance.
Those are our questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
Just one. So just to clarify, there's 2 roll years under appeal with different reference dates, correct?
Yes,
But yet you're maintaining the assessed value to be 1.15 million for both roll years?
yes.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions. They've been asked and answered. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question with respect to the cap rates that you referred to, which you referred from page 5 of the assessor's report. You were, I'll let you turn to it. These are the cap rates, and you were saying that it seemed obvious to you that these were bought because they could be renovated and more rent could be charged. Do you have any information that that's, other than the one Google Street view, that that's what took place?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have access to the same kind of information that the city does. So I'm essentially limited to sort of Google searches and asking around where I can. But to me, like, when you look at these, any reasonable person wouldn't pay a 3.6 cap for a 60-year-old property. So there has to be more to the story. And unless you're able to justify why it's so low, I think you can't take that cap rate at face value and apply it to a property that is fully stabilized.
And that would be your position with respect to virtually all of these properties, then, with the cap rates between the, or as listed on page 5.
I would say not all of them. I think there's other issues with the cap rate evidence they have, like they're using properties that are 60 years older, They're using properties that have significantly more units. They're using properties that obviously buyers bought them knowing they could increase the value significantly. So yeah, I think in the absence of good comparable sales, I think it's difficult to kind of accept these as good comparables, and we need to rely on these cap rate reports.
So your contention is for the cap rate calculations, that either the purchase price is overinflated or the NOI is understated in order to give a misleading cap rate. Is that?
The purchase price is overstated in these. Because when purchasers are doing these numbers on these value add opportunities, they realize that they're overpaying if they were to just keep the property as it is. No person in their right mind would buy a 60-year-old building for a 3.6 cap. They're buying it and they're willing to give the seller a bit of the upside because there's still enough upside for themselves in order to create value. So that's why I mentioned at one point that there should be some sort of follow-up to go back and see, okay, what are the stabilized rents on these properties that they're using as evidence? Because I suspect the rents are much higher, which would result in a very different cap rate.
But when you talk about stabilized rents, you're not talking about historically stabilized going back 3 years, you're talking about stabilized rent subsequent to the purchase date.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think I've got that straight. I don't have anything further. Any need for a summary, Mr. Deitchen?
Yeah, just in regards to, because it comes down to cap rate on this. If you look at our table, if you look at the price per suite, well, the cap rate is 3.6 for 700 St. Mary's. The price per suite is only 115. You look at the price per suites in the table of the sales, none of them are unreasonable. 2390 McPhillips, because it's the newest, is the most comparable. It's at 215, and that's something that we're seeing and that's reflected in our assessed value per suite amounts. So we're comfortable at 5.5 given the size of the building, 4.5 given the size of the building. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thorne, any summary?
No, I think I've sort of accurately said how I feel.
Okay. Thank you very much. That concludes this matter. The board will make their determination in camera at the end of the hearings today, and you will be notified by registered mail.
Okay, thank you very much. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next matter we will be dealing with is number 5 on the list. That's 505 St. Mary Avenue. And I think we've got someone in person here for that matter. Thank you.
Mr. Badger, if you come here. And then sit up here. Yeah.
Mr. Lund, if you could please swear in. Affirm, Mr. Badger.
Before you take a seat, I will just affirm you, so please state your full name.
Jeff
Badger, do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Are there any preliminary matters to deal with respect to the first or number 5 on list 505 St. Mary Avenue? Mr. Dykston, Mr.
No,
Badger?
I don't think so.
Okay, then, Mr. Dykston, would you please lead us through your presentation?
File number 224850. Roll numbers 120916260000. The address is 505 St. Mary Avenue. Roll year 2021. Reference date April 1st, 2018. Assessed values at $310,000 for the 60T portion and $23,447,000 for the 20T portion, for a total of $23,757,000. It is a Resam property with one building, 14 stories high, built in 2020 with 119 suites. On here it shows 0 parking, but there actually should be parking. That will be something I'll have to look into afterwards. Not too sure why it's at 0. On page 2, you can see the sales history from December 2016 at $1 million, which was, I think, essentially just for the land. Page 3 is the income value summary. For some reason, there was a glitch and it duplicated the units on this, so it should just be half of that. So it should be 30 bachelor, 55 one bedrooms, and then 31 2 bedrooms and 3 3 bedrooms for 119 units at an average monthly rent of $1341.49. Continuing on, our gross effective income is $1,858,179, with the expenses being $685,854, bringing the NOI to $1,172,325 at a cap rate of 5%. Brings the value to $23,447,000. Then for the retail portion, the gross effective income is $57,594. Expenses at $1,152, brings the NOI to $55,018 at a cap rate of 7.35%. Brings the value to $310,000. As there was unfinished space in the property for this year, we had a fit up allowance for the area. So there was a commercial unfinished space deduction of $438,240. And then continuing on to our rent comparables on page 5. Tried to find some similar type properties in the area with some different type suite mixes. As you can see, it falls near the low end of the range of average monthly rent per unit. Page 6 is our comparable leases for the property. As you can see, the net rent ranges from about $17 to $19.50. Continuing on to page 7 is our cap rate evidence. Under the multifamily section, you can see it ranges from about 4.3% to 5%. Page 8 is our cap rate table for our modeled cap rates. Page 9 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 10 is the permit for the building, the new build from 2019 for $22.6 million. Page 11 is just some information about the property. You see premium suites offer higher grade fixtures and finishes, stainless steel appliance package with full-size fridge and stove, quartz countertops, glass tile backsplash. And continuing on to page 12, there are some affordable housing units in the building as well. Page 13 are just some suite amenities for the building. Along with 14 is just the property and building amenities. Page 15 is a little bit more information on the building and an exterior photo. And 16 and forward is the interior pictures of the building. As you can see, it's got some stainless steel appliances, vinyl flooring, in-suite laundry. I believe page 19, the second picture is the more affordable type housing. So you can see the white appliances and the countertops. I don't believe are quartz either. Page 20 is the common areas. Page 22 is the music room and the rooftop patio. And that is my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Badger, do you have questions of the assessors?
Yes, I do. Have you inspected the property, walk through, look at the property in detail?
I have not, no.
Has there been any reports on inspections on the properties prior to the assessment being made that you may have reviewed?
There most likely would have been an inspection when the building was added to the roll, but I'm not too sure.
If, in other words, though, you're saying though you have not reviewed those pre-assessment review reports then? Yes.
No, I just reviewed what the information that I had. Okay.
I was gonna ask you, just talk generally before we jump into the details of it. Would you say this building is above average? Is it below average, or is it just like an average finished high-rise apartment building?
I'd say it's probably above average.
Pardon me, above average? Or did you say average?
I'd say above average.
Above average? That's why I get this clarifies my.
You said above average. I think Mr. Badger had trouble hearing that.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I apologize. Can I ask you one quick, what market region is this property located in?
Let's put it in.
Just give me 1 second here. I could double check. Market region 8.
Mr. Deitch, I think you're frozen at the moment. Sorry, Mr. Deitch, I think you're frozen.
Yeah, I think it's coming back here. Just give me 1 sec. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I think the internet's having some issues here. It's market region 8, downtown.
You said that you look at the specific location on the map. Is it on the edge of the downtown area, or is it in the middle of the downtown area, or?
That's not something I would. That's not something I would take.
We're gonna look at location, I mean, in regards to its location, then the
Mr.
Sorry,
Johnson,
I think we're
you
cutting out
repeat
again.
that. He's cutting it out.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
You seem to be back sporadically, so
Yeah,
let's continue and see how it goes, and if we have to take a break, we'll take a break.
Sorry, what was the question beforehand?
when you look at it in regards to your market region, the downtown zone, is this property on the edges of that, or is it in the middle of that, or how's it located within that market region?
In terms of how CMHC breaks it up, how the city breaks it up, it's in the
How the city
downtown
breaks-
area.
How
In
the city
which,
breaks it up?
we don't have the market region map. It's in the colony area. If we Google mapped it. Like if you're inquiring to the general location, is that what you want the panel to understand?
Yes. Okay, so we've agreed that for the 2020, it's located in Region 8, the downtown zone. Is that correct?
Yeah, downtown Osborne, Broadway area.
Okay. The date of a reference date is 2018, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know where it was located in regards to in 2018? You know what market area it was located in then?
Well, I don't think the site changed, so it would be the same property, same location.
I just want to get into the details of your submittal. In reference to the actual year billed or the effective year bill, that's determined by the certificate of construction completion.
Certificate of construction.
Okay, is that the same as the date that the property received its occupancy for 100% of the building?
It wouldn't be because it takes a while for them to build. So occupancy and construction permit issue and date are never the same.
I think that in the your notice of assessment change, it used an April 1st, 2020 date as the completion date, and all the numbers for tax purposes, liability was all adjusted to April 1st, 2020. So you're saying it takes a while for the building. You just sort of said that the date of final occupancy would probably be, 100% occupancy would be after that date, or?
Well, what I'm looking at here is the date of the supplement was issued the 8th of April 2021. So that's when the supplemental notice would have went out, given the occupancy date and the information received from the property manager, whoever the person was corresponding with from our section to the subject property.
Okay. I'll you indicated about the parking stalls. I believe there's 14 surface parking stalls, which includes like a drop-off stall there.
Yep.
I know it's over here, down here in your information, you give a gross floor area per the total gross floor area. Did you take a look at the average gross floor area per suite?
I do not have that information.
Yeah. Well, we'll look at it later on. When you look at your comparables, you broke it down to be 846 square feet. Does that seem unusual to you in terms of an average size?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, like on a per suite basis, like considering that it is gross floor area and it does consider common rooms, the units, there's probably some smaller units when you're looking at the comparators. I know there are affordable units in there. Those ones might be a little bit smaller. That might be something you touch on, but you can see that when looking at the comparables, this is the newest building and we are sitting at the lower end of the range, taking into consideration that there are bachelor units as well. So that'd be something that would pull the average gross floor area downwards. So we went with the market model rents on this one based on the information we have and the unit breakdown, bachelor, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, etc.
I'm just looking at your page 3, we're talking about the income workup. Is that, you came up with an average monthly rent of $1,341. Was that model driven, or is that a number that you guys put together yourself after looking at the site specifics?
That was modeled.
And you went into quite detail in terms of reviewing the project. We talked about its location, talked about unit sizes, unit mix, et cetera, et cetera. But you did say though that in your mind, the project, this particular building, in terms of its overall condition is above average. Did you make any, were you willing to make any recommendations on that average? After looking at the site specific details?
I think what was meant by above average is above average in consideration to all the apartments, regardless of age. I would say by looking at the pictures, if we scroll to the end of it, I would say that it's in an average condition. It's new. Average in terms of its contemporaries per age group. For new builds, it looks average. Now, it doesn't look ornate in any way. It's you can see there's some venting along the roof or the ceiling in the room. I mean, I know downtown there are some loft style buildings that have those features as well. This is not a loft, however. So I would say average, good condition. It's got his own style.
In terms of the vacancy used, would that be again, would that be model driven?
Correct. Correct.
In terms of the capitalization rate, again, that was model driven, or was there any adjustments for the site specific or the fact that the building is in its lease up mode?
That's modeled as well.
And the your expenses were model driven too, I guess, huh?
Correct.
I'm flipping over to page 5, your rent comparables. I was just curious, could you not find any comparables in the market region that this property is located within? We only have one here that's within the market region. The rest of them are in what I would consider a better area than the subject property.
We were looking for, primarily looking at property from an effective year built standpoint. Sure, there are older properties around the subject, but we're looking for newer or older renovated. Now, some of these are in Osborne Village, which, you know, slightly, I would say it's a more attractive area to rent from a tenant standpoint. That's no disagreement there. Based on its unit breakdown, the model rent at $1,341 seemed reasonable when we did our analysis, especially looking at the other high rises comparables 1, 3, and 4. Of course, we're on the newer end, even though 1 Evergreen obviously is not new. But it's, you know, it's on the river in Osborne. It's a more attractive location, in my opinion. So we feel that $1,341 on an average monthly rent per unit is reasonable, looking at the project and the project photos and the comparable rents we have.
You start off by saying that you pick comparables that were of the same effective year built in that range. But these other ones are all older, and plus they're outside of the market, with the exception of Smith Street.
Well, I would disagree, saying that like there's only so many new for-profit rents we receive in the general area, income and expense mailers that are usable, where we can look at them and put them in our system as applicable to be used as a rent comparable. So these are the comparables we've chosen. They're all within short drive from each other in the downtown area. And a tenant looking to rent would be in that area, would be considering the 4 properties and the subject property. This is the type of building they were looking for. That's what we're saying.
I was just curious. The University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation, who indirectly is the owner, built a similar building about 100 yards, 100 meters, 200 meters down from it, 320 quality. This particular building is 275 or 290 quality. So we're talking very, very close. We built a building, it's 2 years older than this. Is there any reason why you didn't use that as a comparable? I checked, they submitted all the income and expense reports on that particular building. I just think that a building next door, relatively same age, designed to be for affordable housing, would be a worthy comparable.
Okay, so now my memory has been jogged. So that building, from what I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, they run it at an affordable housing rate. Like, is it subsidized in any way?
All our buildings are subsidized, but the rents that I'm reporting to you and the rents that they submit to you, I saw the rent rolls they gave you. They actually gave you the rent rolls, what people are paying, plus they gave you an indication of the market rent for that unit.
Right, so we don't use what the owner is estimating the suite ought to have rented for if they weren't renting it in a subsidized manner. So that's why you don't see Manitoba housing rents in our tables, because the way we're assessing the property is what for-profit purchaser and vendor would agree to transact if the property was purchased based on how much money it could potentially make for the person buying it. When you're looking at a project like 290 Colony or this one, they're run in a manner to provide affordable units, and they're subsidized, so the rents are lower. So you can't use those lowered rents and say that, well, this is what the for-profit conversation would hinge on. That's why we use private rents, the best ones we could find.
On 320, the one we're talking about, it's all the university properties. We don't want to have 100% low income, so or 100% affordable. The 320 building is 50% for market and 50% affordable rents. Now, affordable rents doesn't mean it's grants or below market. It means it was designed to be affordable, either by suite sizes. Or we talked before, we looked at the pictures here, some units not having stainless steel, some of them not having balconies, et cetera, but if you look at the rent roll, when we provide you the financial statements on 320, it breaks you down the market rents. And anyway, I don't want to get into it too much, but I'm just saying that only a portion of the building is below market rents. I mean, understated rents.
I mean, that would be in your evidence, not ours.
Yeah.
So we can cross that bridge when we get there.
Rosie, your page 7 capitalization rates, multifamily. None of them are in close to the reference year, and none of them are within the market region. Is that correct?
I do not believe so, no.
Pardon me?
Well, 333 Ward, January 2016, for this particular roll year, it's April 1st, 2018. That's the best comparator we have for a newer build. It's at 5, we're at 5. That's presumably why.
They're all outside the market region. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Well, yeah, they're not downtown. If we had a downtown sale to use, we would have been in this chart.
On page 6, your comparative leases there. Well, for the commercial component here, what market region is that located within?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Well, for the commercial rents that you're using on page 6, your comparable leases.
Yeah.
For the commercial component of this building, what market region is that in?
Those ones, I believe they're-
Downtown, or is that outside of
Yeah.
downtown?
I believe they're all downtown.
Okay. I'll provide the evidence that from a commercial point of view, this property falls within the West End area. So all your comparable leases here are all within the downtown area. Okay, so I guess we can, I won't get into it in more detail. The cap rate to you of 5%. Did you make any? Did you take into consideration the that this building is in its new construction that hasn't reached occupancy yet? It hasn't undergone this lease up. It's an affordable housing project that lacks a lot of amenities that typical apartment buildings would have, like balconies, small suites, bare concrete ceilings, bare concrete walls. Any of that taken into account?
Cap rates are
5%. Well, you already said that it was, I'm sorry, you said it was
Modeled.
Model driven, yeah, so you guys wouldn't have gotten into that, okay. Okay, I'm sorry for taking so long, but that's my review of. Those are my questions of you then. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Mr. Badger, your presentation, please. And I should preface, I understand that there is both applicant rebuttal and city rebuttal on this property, but we'll hear your presentation first and then we'll get into the.
I haven't seen the city rebuttal.
Rebuttal's only exchanged at the time of the hearing when it's introduced.
I still haven't seen it.
If necessary, we can take a short break for you to review it, but if we can hear your presentation now, that would start off the process. Please.
Okay. In my rebuttal evidence, I'm just gonna go through it and I'll try to be quick as possible, okay? I did make a couple mistakes when I first put together this report, which I picked up on my rebuttal. On page 3 of my summary of salient facts, the commercial space is actually under the building type. I made reference to 2538, it's actually 3652. The year built, I did make a mistake saying that CMH8 occupied the commercial space on November 4th. That was a different location. Unfortunately, I get mixed up sometimes between, we have 3 buildings basically in a row. And that was for a sister building. During this period of time, the commercial component was unoccupied for the full period of the time in question here. I just want to mention to you that the property owner, I think is very important because it lends itself to tell you that this particular building is a very specific design building. It's designed as an affordable housing project. And we'll run over some of the key features, so it's not a standard building. I just want to mention, so the building, the ownership is a Manitoba Association Inc. It's a nonprofit entity owned by the University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation. That's related to the University of Winnipeg as part of our initiative to redevelop the downtown zone around the city of Winnipeg there. We're trying some of our goals, it's a nonprofit, but our goals, we have 4 pillars, and that would be concept of sustainability, environmental, social, and economic principles for the building that we're trying to provide affordable and safe housing for people within that downtown area there. I'll just point it out on page 11. So there's a locator map. You can see I put down subject property down in the bottom there. It's located on the corner of St. Mary's and Conley Street, right in the corner down there. There's 119 suites, 28 are studios ranging in size of 342 square feet to 481 square feet. There's 59 one-bedroom units ranging in size of 58 to 630 square feet. And we have 29 two-bedrooms that are running from 743 to 781 square feet. And we have 3-bedroom units at 1,171 square feet. The total building area is 103,000 square feet. The net residential area, if I just add up all the square footages of all the suites, is approximately 826,000 square feet. It gives you what they call in the business, the development business, a floor efficiency factor of the overall building in terms of the rentable area to the gross of only 76%. So the particular building, the efficiency of the building is not very, it wasn't designed to be very efficient from an economic point of view. On page 14, I gave you the breakdown by floor in the bottom. So the total is 103,000 square feet. The commercial component is 3,600 square feet. The net area for the residential component then is around 79,000 square feet. The overall efficiency of the building is 76%. The reason why I highlight this, it's important for commercial. If this building was to be put on the market, if you're looking at the market to buy this building, this is something that they would undergo in their due diligence to assess, is this an efficient building? Because you have to heat the whole building, not just the individual units. So in here, this ratio is off over industry standards. Industry standards would be somewhere around 83 to 85%. So the building design in the program said it's more targeted to affordable housing goals. It's not typical comparison to market-oriented apartment units. Some of the other examples in the design, we have no patios or balcony areas. There's a limited number of operable windows in those pictures. Some of those windows don't open up. Most buildings, all the windows open up to get air into the building. The unit mix here, 74% of our units are bachelors and ones. Nowadays, if you look at most of these buildings, especially look at the comparables, you'll see that usually somewhere around 40% studios and 1-bedroom units, and about 60% 2-bedroom units. So you see here, we have a very high proportionate number of our units are all bachelors and ones. So we start looking at average rents per suite. We need to make some adjustments, and that's what I'll get into later on. If you look at the overall size, if an investor is looking to buy something, I guess you say, it's off in terms of the typical, so they'd be somewhat reluctant to it. Only 63% of the units have in-suite laundry. That's where I said that we have market units and they're market rents, and then we have some affordable units, we call them, that are they're more stripped. So in the market unit rents that we're actually getting market rents, 76% of them have only 63 of the total 119, 53% of the units have in-suite laundry. Only 76% of 76% of the units have dishwashers. The other portion don't have dishwashers. The building's parking ratio here, we only have 1 stall per 9 residential units. So it basically goes, it's virtually, when you take a look at loading and handicap, we don't have very many stalls. We only have a handful here. Again, in the industry, it'd be typical to have at least a 1-to-1 coverage in terms of parking, 1 stall per residential unit. Here you see that we're extremely on the lower end because people coming into this particular building wouldn't be able to afford a car, or they live in the downtown area with a little walk. From an institutional buyer of this building, that would be something that'd be concerning them, because if the market got soft, how do you compete if you don't have parking? The individual suite sizes are approximately 15 to 20% smaller than the typical. The finishes in this building, I know the pictures look really nice. I got to give the credit to the architects who did from the outside, it looks nice. It looks sharp. It looks very modern, very hip, because it's located against the art gallery, and the university used the same designer of the art gallery's addition to be in here, so the looks of the things would sort of tie in together. So it looks pretty, but does it really function pretty? That's another question. But the interior finishes here, there's bare concrete ceilings, they're not even painted out. We noticed that all the mechanical systems are all exposed in the ceiling. Some of the walls aren't even finished. There's no drywall over the concrete slabs, the structural slabs going down in the building there. It's just the typical vinyl lap flooring. I mean, it looks pretty, but it's just the lower end, vinyl lap flooring. And I mentioned that the HVAC system is all exposed. The tub showers, to save money, you go with the 1-piece fiberglass tubs nowadays. There's imitation quartz countertops, and the appliances we talk, some of them have stainless steel, some are just the regular white painted appliances. All our rents here include heat, electricity, and water. Okay, that's another thing I just want to mention. Institutional investor, he'd be upset about that. He'd want to see them being separately metered so they can control their tenants and how they're spending their energy costs in their buildings. So that's what I'm trying to emphasize here. This was designed as an affordable housing project. It wasn't designed to be flipped to the commercial market for a for-profit type of building. There's many factors there. On page 7, I just want to mention a couple points here. In terms of the questions about rental rates and vacancies and stuff like that, the burden of proof is on the assessor, not the applicant, to produce evidence to prove it here. You mentioned here the assessors basically came in here today and they said everything was model driven. And here's our comparables that justify the model driven thing here. To me, it lacks a real true look at the building. I just want to flip over to page 8. There's an order in the, there's been a case of the municipal board where the municipal board basically said these assessments have to be site specific. If there's a dispute, it has to be site specific, meaning that you have to take into account a specific location, the type of building, the type of units, the finishes, et cetera, et cetera. When you take a look at it, so you have to do some homework on the specific building. And I'm repeating myself. I'm saying that I gave you the list of things saying that this is a very specific purpose design. And the comparables that are the assessment department has put forward lack any sort of adjustments for any of these type of amenity differences or size differences there. Okay, I just want to go over this, talk about it. We know that we all agree that it has to be the approach to the evaluation is going to be on an income basis. I'm going to just flip through and start walking down it on page 9 at the top there. It's located at 320 column. I'm sorry. The very first item in terms of the evaluation will be income. It is tough to find another affordable housing project to take a look at. We have a sister building, which I said is just down the street at 320 Coleman Street. I thought that would be the best example because half of the units that are market. And what I did do is I went through the rent roll and used all the market rents to come up with my average rent per suite. So I'm putting forward to you that the best example of determining the market rent, you'll be able to use that as a comparable. So the average market rent at 320 Colony Street was $1,165 per residential unit. That's using the rent roll for 2018, which is the reference year. If you take a look at Appendix 6 of my report, you'll see there Appendix 6, 220 Colony Street rent roll. You'll see down there the square footage, the market rent there was 118,000. There's 102 units. That works out to 1,165. So that's the rent that I used on average right across the board for my analysis here. On the commercial rent, I used $15 a square foot rather than the assessor's $16.50 a square foot. If we flip to my rebuttal document, is it okay if I can flip back and forth?
No, I think what we'll do is we'll finish the presentation first. We'll have questions on that, and then we'll move to your rebuttal document, Mr. Manager.
In my rebuttal document, I gave you specific commercial rents in the West End area. We already spoke about the assessor's rents. He's using $16.50 based on all his comparables being in the downtown zone. But they got the wrong zone. So I'm saying you should rely on my comparables that you'll see when we talk about the rebuttal. In terms of the vacancy factor, we assumed 5.5% versus the assessor's 3%. I'm adjusting for site specifics. Okay. The very first item I want to mention that this building sits in, we've agreed for in 2020, the building sat in market area 8, which is a downtown zone. In the base year or the reference year 2018, this particular building sat in the West End zone. The university, because we have to somehow we put these buildings together, very expensive. We try to get as many grants as we can to make these things work. We actually went to the city and sat down with them. They have a housing department. They want to see affordable housing being developed. They agreed so that we can qualify our buildings under the city's tax exemption program on property taxes, where we get a rebate there. We already officially moved the location, the boundaries for the downtown zone to encapsulate this little corner where these properties sit. I'm putting forward to you, when they produce the computer generated models, they just look at zone 8 and they grab all the comparables in there and they spit out this evaluation. As of the reference here, this building sat in the West End zone, and the rental rates and the vacancy factors and the cap rates would be all different. It would spit out a different assessment value. In my rebuttal documents, I actually got pictures of the maps to show you what happened there and show you how the differences are there. What I did do is on Appendix 8, I provided CMHC's vacancy rate for the downtown zone for this specific zone we're talking about now. What Appendix 8. I'm sorry, it's actually Appendix 7 on page 17. You'll see that the reference year 2018 October, the overall vacancy rate in Winnipeg was 2.9%. The assessment department is using 3% in their model driven range there. We drop down and take a look at the West Broadway, where this, for CMHC purposes, they call it the West Broadway area, this specific zone where these apartment buildings are located. You'll see that the average vacancy was 5.5%. So again, I go back to, they have to be site specific. Take a look at the vacancy rate right within this region or this area here. That's 5.5%. I also did include on page 18, Appendix 8, the lease up for 505. Now, these are all post reference. You might not want to, I'm not too sure if you can use it or not, but I just want to.
No, we're not going to deal with that post
I'll
reference
leave that up.
information.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Okay. In terms of the operating expenses, notwithstanding they use a computer generated operating expenses based on the gross income. My numbers, when I actually used the real numbers from the downtown project, the 320 Palmer Street project, we came out very, very close. So we don't have much dispute in terms of the operating expenses. In terms of the capitalization rate, I'm putting forward that the assessor's 5% should be increased to 6%, reflecting site-specific considerations and the added risk of the building being evaluated in advance of its achieving its stabilized rent. To be honest, at this particular time, we didn't really know what the rents are going to be. The building had to go through an absorption period, which ended up being a long period. But our rents that we were showing as being market rents were they weren't proven. So if an investor was looking at buying this building, and the building's 100% empty, they say, Jesus, I better raise my capitalization expectation rate because there's a level of risk in this building filling up, whether it'll fill up and how it's going to perform. The other thing I would like to say is the other thing too, as I said, we have to take a look at this specific building, the specific features of this building. I went through the whole big list on the affordable housing factors in this building and in terms of its design. Institutional investors will say, oh, there's too many bachelors in ones. It doesn't fit the model. It's very stripped. There's no parking. Oh, geez, take a look at the average size of these units. They're very tiny. People might not like it. Again, the competitive market, they're going to want more. So I'm suggesting to you that their capitalization rate should be increased from 5 to 6%, split between 1, there's a risk of lease up in the market, 2, for the amenities that we're talking about that are in this building and the factors of this building being specific to affordable housing. The I should maybe just take you. I did provide. On page 15. I did provide a breakdown of the evaluation model here between the assessors and mine. You'll see there in the top part here, we're talking about the income. I've already talked to you about, I disagree with his income. I'm suggesting that we should be using an average rent of $1,166 per month per suite, which I've used. And I adjusted my overall rent for $15 a square foot on the commercial component. We talked about the vacancy rate. The assessors, they use a 3%. I'm saying we should use a 5.5%. On the commercial side, I said they used a 6% vacancy factor, which is lower than the actual in the marketplace. I used a 7.5%. We were just talking about the operating expenses. The assessment department, the model is using 600. If I can't, I'm sorry if it's small, but that's $695,000. You see, mine came out to actually under that 618. But I used the exact numbers from the commons, which is the proven building there. The net income, the assessment department used was $1,172,000. Mine ended up being $989,000. We talked about the assessors' capitalization rates, and mine suggesting it should go to 6% and 7.35% on the commercial component. The value of the assessments model-driven value is $23,756,000. Mine is after an adjustment for the fact that the commercial component was totally not leased. So accepting the adjustment that the assessment department is using, I gave it a valuation of. My eyes aren't very good. I just flipped to the front part here. That says 18, right?
I think you had 16 million.
Yeah, $16,701,000. Just before we, one thing I didn't walk you through, I would like to. I would like to walk you just through very quickly. Page 12 of my report, which is appendix 2, the site plan. It's a very tight site. That's probably the reason why we don't have enough room for parking. You'll see there, it's a footprint of the building. You can see to the top of the diagram, you'll see the parking stalls. That's 14 stalls. Then the building's built over top of this as it goes up. And the bottom here, you'll see the section for a commercial component. On the next page, page 13, we talk about that's a typical floor plan as it goes up the tower there. If you take a look at the right smack in the middle, there's a staircase and the elevators shafts that go up. You'll see all of the white all the way around it is all the spaces for the common area, which led to that efficiency factor only being 76 or 77% versus a typical 83%. This building was sort of designed to make it look sharp with all these corners and square and all that kind of stuff from a distance. So from the outside, it looks pretty good. But imagine living in here when you start seeing there's lots of wasted space to create that. You got long corridors in the suites that they're not as efficient. You're walking through your dining room areas to get into your suites, and they're very, very tiny. The picture does look good in terms of the number of windows and stuff here, but the actual number of areas in the windows and the overall building is lower than the typical. And I mentioned before that some of them aren't even operable. So in summary, I'm asking the board, based on the site condition specific information utilizing the comparables from 320. It works out to a value of $16,701,000. Versus the assessment department's 23,756. I did ask here. I made a suggestion here that the effective date of the reassessment should be adjusted to January 1st, 2022. This building did not get its occupancy for 100% of the units until April 1st of 2021. The building was the period here when you're trying to come up with the value here. There was no allowance for allowing to have an absorption period. I would say it's premature that they assessed it back to 2021, that it should be from January 1st on to allow it to sort of stabilize and start to fill up. I think that concludes my submission.
Thank you, Mr. Denchen. Questions?
Yes, we have rebuttal as well, very short,
Yeah.
very, is that a time to do it? Or?
No, let's have the questions first on the presentation, and then we'll deal with Mr. Badger's rebuttal, and then deal with your rebuttal.
So you'd agree that the city of Winnipeg issued the supplementary notice of assessment in April of 2021? Is that correct?
So what was it? Yes,
Would
the
you-
issue is based on April 1st.
Yeah,
2021.
2021, yeah. So if we go to page 18 of your brief, it
Yes.
says here that they've been leasing up and collecting rent presumably since
Oh.
September of 2020. Is that correct?
It's
Again, that's the post-reference material that
Oh, okay.
probably get to on the next hearing.
All right, okay. Well, I mean, if we're talking, I guess here's the thing, we're talking about moving the reference date, which I'm not even sure there's a mechanism in this hearing to do. Moving the date of the sub. It's important to realize that they're up and running well before the date we supplemented them. But we can talk about that more the next time around.
Okay.
The location of the property, would you agree it's about a 4 to 5 minute walk from the University of Winnipeg?
correct.
Did you put in your determination of cap rate, did you consider that the relative advantage in terms of having a pool of students to pull from?
I didn't allow allowance for it. I mean, that's one reason why the rents are. It was designed as an affordable housing, so people who are going to the education facility can sort of afford it.
So do you see its location, its close proximity as an advantage?
It's an advantage to market it based on the market rents that are lower than a typical apartment building.
Do you have any cap rate sales to support your cap rate determination of 6%?
No, I'm just saying, an investor looking at this building. That's gonna flip back to, I would say, I relied on the information you put in your report on capitalization rate is typical of all the ones that you've been doing during the cycle here. I looked at that. It looks to me on average, if this building was, you said that this building is average. For a while there, you said it was a little bit better than average, then you said average. but without looking at the site specific. I look at the average one across here, like your city, your average capitalization rate is 5.1. Colliers is 5.5. CBR is 5.28, 5.25. Sorry, 5.38. Cushman was 5.25. So it looks like if there's an average building, average situation, the cap rate should be 5.25. And I allowed an increase of 75%. So I gave it a small bump in the cap rate for the site-specific conditions. And also an investor looking at this, he's going to add something to the cap rate. The fact that he's buying a building that has not reached its stabilized in terms of lease up.
Did you put any weight when determining your final valuation on the fact that the permit to build the property was $22.6 million?
I did not put any reliance at all on that because we know from past hearings, we're the evaluation here is based on the income approach, not what the costs were. Because if you take a look at, I'm pretty sure that when you do the income and expense, we give you information on the financials here. A lot of the differential is covered by grants. But we don't take grants into account. We look at the income. So they're offset.
If purchased by a for-profit purchaser and run in a for-profit manner, would they be getting grants from the government?
They could, yes. They qualify for the tax grants, just like anybody else. If they move people in, they're on social assistance, they can let the person in there and get the check from the government for having that person there.
Is the current owner a for-profit entity?
No, it's a nonprofit.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
Just one question on page 3 of your brief, you've got issues under appeal, assessed value and liability.
Yeah, I was asking, I'm asking the panel here today to consider that for the first year, the 2021, because the building didn't obtain its occupancy permit until April 1st, that there should be, for that particular year, the liability for the increase shouldn't be there because of the fact that it would be typical to allow for a period of time, it has been in the past. They would allow for a period of time for a building to achieve its substantial lease up. I have personal experience in building, I don't know how 20, 30 of these apartment buildings. We always used to be given a year, or condos used to be given a year, or they sort of monitor the sales and condominiums, and the assessment comes in as people buy them, not when you get an occupancy permit for all the units or construction completes, and all of a sudden you get hit with the taxes. So when I did say liability there, I did make a request that the assessment should start in January 1st, 2022. So that's why I was making reference to the liability. It's just to the increase, not assessed value, but the effective date of the increase in the assessment.
Because I think when I looked through the application, liability wasn't part of the application.
Okay.
Stephen, maybe you can confirm that?
We only have quantum.
It's probably right.
That's all I have.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have.
Ms. Anderson, questions?
I have no questions. Thank you for your presentation.
And I don't have any questions at this point, but we'll hear now your,
Excuse me, sir, I'm sorry. Can I just have a?
I was gonna ask for your rebuttal evidence.
Well, I just wanted, going back to this question, we're talking about two different things here. I'm not saying we're not liable for taxes in 2021. I'm just saying it's the liability of the increase. That's why I didn't check off when we're appealing not being liable, meaning that there shouldn't be any taxes. I said, we don't qualify for no tax, we're paying taxes, we're just, it's the effective date of the increase in the assessed value that I was referring to here in terms of liability, not liable for taxes altogether.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. And Mr. Badger, you had some rebuttal evidence, I believe, to present. Do we have that rebuttal evidence?
There should be a folder at the top.
Oh, yes.
And the assessor would just confirm that they received it as well.
Yeah,
Before you start, oh, would they go first with theirs or want me to
No,
go first?
you present your rebuttal evidence first, and then the assessment department will present theirs.
Okay. I'm just curious for process here is I submitted this like over a week ago. Or approximately ago, but how come you had circulated, wouldn't you, or
The rebuttal evidence is presented or
at the hearing?
released at the hearing.
Okay. Okay, rebuttal evidence. I was just on page 2, I was just correcting some of the mistakes I made in the my presentation, but I think I picked up on those as I was going through it. It was just about the reference about this the commercial tenancy was wrong. That was for a different property of the universities there. What I did do here is in taking a look at the assessors, I was just rebutting the assessors rent comparables. And then at the bottom down there, you'll see my comments. So I just want to run through. I'm just putting forth that all the comparables, with the exception of 160 Smith Street, was outside the market area. Okay. I'm also even going to bring up a comment saying that even 505 St. Mary, as a reference period, it actually sat in the West Broadway area, not in the downtown zone. But I'll show you in here, there's a document here that'll tell you that they changed the map at the end of 2019. And then when their computer went to work here and created their values, it created the values based on what was happening in the downtown market. Okay, so anyways, I just want to highlighting there that we should ignore the comparables over in the River Osmond area. Even the assessment department said that those could be seen as being more favorable there. People would want to live there because of the amenities versus here. Smith Street's in the downtown zone. It's relatively comparable. Now, here's my comments down here. So I basically said down the bottom, market region. So I just commented on that. The unit mix, what I really wanted to say there, this is site specific, meaning that this was built as affordable housing. The only way we can get cheaper rents, drive the rents down, the real market rents, is to build smaller units. And unit mix, meaning the 1s, 2s, and 3s, we rely more on bachelors, 1s, and 2s. So people can economize by moving into bachelors to get a lower rent. So if you take a look at our ratio, 71% of our units are either bachelors and 1-bedroom units, 26% are 2-bedroom units, 3% 3-bedroom units. Now you look at his comparables, the only one was similar to that would be that Smith Street property. So I'm emphasizing to you, when you start looking at the split with other people, you see this unit mix doesn't fit the mold of typical properties, market driven for-profit projects here. So I'm pointing out as a major factor in the differences there. The rent that the city's thing came up with would be if I use the city, they came up with $1.59 on the $1,341 average. Now, again, when they're dealing with these averages here, they're saying the subject property is. That they're using is $1,341 per month, the average rent per suite. And it gives you these comparables here. There's no adjustment in terms of whether or not those guys have more 2 bedrooms or units versus ours. Our average would be pushed down lower if we had more bathrooms and 1 bedroom, so it just makes common sense. And you can see just below that, you'll see there gross floor area. Look at ours is only 846 square feet. Average gross floor area doesn't mean that that's the usable area of the suite. That's the gross floor area per residential unit. And I said to you, our efficiency factor is
Mr. Badger, I'm just gonna interrupt here for a minute. I'm not sure this is rebuttal. This is your presentation being repeated.
okay, I'm just
If you can
clarifying.
get to something in
Okay.
the rebuttal category, that would be appreciated.
Okay. Okay, it's fine. Okay, commercial leases, the assessor used properties that are all outside of the market area. They used all the downtown zone. I gave evidence that for commercial properties, office and retail, it falls within the West Broadway area, not the downtown zone. So we can rule out all their comparables. The applicants, I provided some comparable rents there in the West End marketplace, which this building sits in for office and retail properties. There's some comparables there. I used $15 per square foot. I use these comparables to justify my $15 square foot. What I'd like to take you then to is some expert some information that's provided in the assessments 2020 general assessment. On page 6, it talks about independent variables that should be considered, and they talk about market region being top 1, effective year built, high quality number of rental units, total gross floor area, average rental unit sizes, unit types, mix, amount of parking amenities. I don't see in this model driven assessment them taking these things into account. The assessment department has said that they really didn't get into that. They didn't get into that type of detail. Okay, what I'd like to do though is for the 2020 assessment on page 7, this is the map. I'm gonna blow it up. I just want to, the reason why I put it the scale here is on January 25th, 2019. Well, it was updated. This map was updated October 4th, 2019. So that's after the reference date. And the only change is you flip over to the current. If I blow it up right now here, if you take a look, I did an arrow there. The property sits in what they call their area is 167. So the only difference, they made that change in the end of 2019 to include this little zip of land which our buildings are located in.
But I think we
can't
appreciate
live
that.
it.
That's
Okay.
post-reference as well. That's post-reference date for this.
What I'm trying to. Okay, so then we shouldn't be using the downtown zone then. The property should be, all the information that should be assessed based on it being West Broadway. That's why I use site specific, that's all I'm trying to do. And then I photocopied, there's attaching the office and retail market regions. That they suggested that this property falls within the downtown zone. The downtown zone is 4. I did a blow up. You'll see the downtown zone there. You see the area 167 where this pointing to. That's the area that the building sits within. It sits within this outside of the city center for evaluation purposes. So they should be using comparables within that zone, not the downtown zone.
That's your presentation on
Yes.
the rebuttal. Okay, thank you, Mr. Deitchen. Any questions on the rebuttal?
Yeah, just one very brief question. So in your analysis on page 2, why are you lumping bachelors and one bedrooms together as one type of unit? Aren't they different?
Because they cater to usually to a person, a single person. It's an accommodation for a single person.
Does CMHC make a distinction between bachelor and one bedroom units in their analysis on a
Yes,
yearly basis? They do. Okay, so when it looks like the chart here, so correct me if I'm wrong, we've got about 25% bachelor units out of the grand total. Would you agree that roughly?
yeah, actually, I gave you the breakdown. It's in my report, I gave it to you.
Those are combined.
24%, yes.
24%. So the majority is actually one bedroom and larger. So I'm just making sure that distinction is out there. That's it. No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions on the rebuttal?
I have no questions. Thank you.
And Mr. McIntyre?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
I don't have any questions, and I believe that Mr. Deitch and Mr. Brokus, you have submitted some rebuttal evidence as well.
Yeah, it's just an occupancy permit. It is from April of 2021. So you can, that is, I guess, technically post reference, but it is showing the year it was built. So it's up to you whether you want to let it in or not.
Let's try to, I'm going to stay consistent and say it's post reference. We're not going to deal with it with respect to this hearing then.
Understood. Then we'll keep it out for now. So other than a short break after this file, we're done. Thank you.
And I'm quite happy to take a short break after this file, but before we do, any need of a summary, Mr. Deitch and Mr. Brokus.
We'll do the summary just at the end of 2023 to kind of tie it along.
Mr. Badger,
That's
that's fair to
correct.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, then that concludes this matter, and we'll take 5 minutes. Is 5 minutes enough, Mr. Brokus, Mr. Deitch?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. Okay, we'll take 5 minutes and we'll be back here shortly after 11. Questionably. Okay, I'll call this meeting back to order and we can proceed with item 6 on the list, 505 St. Mary Avenue, please. Mr. Deitchen, can you lead us through your presentation, please?
Yep. File number 224841. Roll number 12091626 000. The address is 505 St. Mary Avenue, roll year 2023. Reference date April 1st, 2021. We have a recommendation for the value using our NOI of 1,172,325 and a cap of 4.75%. Brings the value to 24,278 for the class code 20 portion.
Mr. Badger?
Did you change the rent? I'm sorry, can you just walk through it very quickly so I can jot it down? I haven't seen the paper.
Well, it's a it's a verbal recommendation.
So what are you changing? Just the cap rate?
Sorry,
What changes did you make?
I increased the cap rate to 4.75% for the class code 20 portion.
Okay. No, I want to proceed.
Okay. Thank you then, Mr. Deitchen. Would you continue with your presentation, please?
Yep, that's the same as previous, 119 suites. The outdoor parking is missing, but should be 14. Sale for in December 2016 for $1 million. It's 119 suites at an average monthly rent of $1363.30. Continuing on to the rent comparables on page 5. again, tried to find within the area. Newer built properties, as you can see, some are a bit older. But with different suite mixes, and you can see again, it falls well below the range of average monthly rent per unit. Page 6 again is the comparable leases for the property ranging from 1550 to 2544. Continue on to page 7 is the cap rate evidence. As you can see, it ranges from 3.6% to 5.74%. These cap rates are actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose is to show these individual cap rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model derived cap rates. And then page 8 is the cap rate table showing our modeled cap rates. Continue on to page 10 again is the permit from 2019 for the building at $22.6 million. Page 11 and 12 is just again the information of the properties and some of the finishes for the suites. Page 13 and 14 are the suite and building amenities. And then page 15 forward are just the same pictures as before, showing the interior of the suites and some of the amenities like the rooftop patio, music room, and common areas. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Badger. Questions for the assessor?
With the exception of your recommended cap rate, the rest of the information is basically model driven, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then and I asked you the same question before. I just want to put it in here for the hearing. Is it above average? Is it average or is it below average? The overall building in terms of its location and the style of building, quality, amenities, things like that nature. How would you consider this to an investor?
It appears average for its age.
Okay. I noticed in this particular time you used downtown rent comparables. It seems to be more applicable. I guess I did ask you whether or not you pulled up 320. You said no. No reason. 320 Colony. If you take a look at this here in terms of your comparables here. Gross floor areas, none of the comparables are even close to the average gross floor area per suite. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it also includes common areas and stuff, so it doesn't directly reflect the size of the units.
Okay. And then in terms of unit mix, the only one that might be comparable in terms of unit mix, similar, would be Smith Street again.
Yeah, Smith Street is probably the closest in the mix.
And how did you end up coming up? If you look at these comparables, and I'm assuming you looked at the details of these comparables, how did you end up getting the $1,363 average per unit?
That's the model value.
So there's no adjustments basically, and these are just comparables. They're not really. They weren't used to calculate the average monthly rent. They're using for the evaluation process. They were just there for just examples, I guess. Is that correct?
They're just there to support our valuation, our average monthly rent.
And then your comparables, you used all comparables in downtown zone, but from your office retail. From an office retail point of view, these are all outside of the market region for this project.
It's in the general downtown area at the core.
But it's outside of your market region for your modeling purposes.
Sorry, say it again.
Well, this for office retail, the market region is the West End, is that correct? For this project?
It's in Market Region 8, which is encapsulated in the downtown area for 2023.
So if I take a look on your page 8, we talk about capitalization rates. Your analysis there. The average capitalization rate based on your modeling between the 20th and 80th would be 5.2. The Colliers would be 5.5, your CBR would be 5.25. Cushman Wakefield would be 5.25. That's sort of correct. So your recommendation of 4.75, that you'd be viewing this as being above average then?
We based that recommendation on page 7, 2390 McPhillips, stabilized income and expenses and the known sale price came up to a 4.79 cap. It's built in 2015, which is newer than average. Our property under consideration currently is newer than average, so we don't think consider any sort of what's the average in the broker's range is really something that's relevant.
Yeah, those are all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, any questions for the assessors?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. McIntyre?
And I have no questions. Thank you.
And the only question I have is with respect to cap rate compressions. Between the last reference date and the reference date in the subject property, has there been evidence of cap rate compression for multifamily dwellings in Winnipeg?
Yeah, definitely. We've seen based on income and expense mailers and sales mailers coming forth. It's nice, and we asked for it when the vendor self-declares what the cap rate they purchased the property was, and we're seeing those numbers going down. You can also see in broker's report, which we don't have in our brief. The line ticks down. I think that has something to do with interest rates, cost of money going towards our reference date became cheaper to borrow. So it makes sense that would push the price up with a known stabilized NOI that would have an effect of pushing the caps down. So we're seeing evidence of that in a couple angles.
Great, thank you very much. That's my only question. Can Mr. Badger, your presentation, please?
I'll just walk you through my summary, but I'm not going to jump into the details because we already spoke about it before. I did make some errors in my typing errors and references in this particular package, which I picked up on my rebuttal. The file number was wrong on page 3. File number was wrong. It should be 4841. The years appealed, it should be, that's incorrect. It should be 2023 realty assessment. At the bottom down there, I'd made the same mistake as I made in the earlier where I made reference to CMHA occupancy November 4th, 21. That's not correct. The time of the reference here, this building, well, it wasn't built yet, I guess, but anyways, its first tenant didn't move in until 2022. In my rebuttal evidence, I'm going to make a slight, I'm asking to make a slight revision to the recommended value, which I'll walk you through it. It's only on the commercial component because 2 of the 3 spaces were unoccupied and yet to be occupied yet, and the leaseholds haven't been done yet. I'm asking for an adjustment to the commercial component for the cost of those improvements not being done. Legally speaking, those units are not available for occupancy until such time someone makes that investment. So I'm asking for the same adjustment that the assessor had provided us for the earlier evaluation assessment here, but for 2/3 of the commercial component, not 1/3, because one of the units was leased up. We get into rebuttal, the revised value, it'll just push it down slightly below 19 million. And I guess I just want to, highlight the fact that this is specially designed, specially built for a specific target market, which is when built, you have to live with that building like that. And in my mind, from a marketing point of view, they'll restrict its ability to be able to sell to someone else in the future because of some of the limitations. And we already walked through the limitations. I don't want to go into it anymore. And I think you understand the limitations or the differences in this particular building versus a new high-rise that has it's more driven for the average tenancy. We go through the evaluation process. On page 15, I have my modeling is done there. Okay, and then we'll just sort of walk through. In terms of the my rent, average rent per suite per unit, I said the best comparable would be to use the sister project, which is 320 Colony. And on the reference year, its average rent was $1,272.89. That's what I used as my rent figure rather than the assessor's 1,300 and something per month. In terms of the commercial rent figure, I used $15 a square foot versus the assessor's $16.50. In my rebuttal, I provided some information on commercial comparables in the marketplace to justify that. I have also pointed out that all the comparables that the assessor is using is in a different market region. The comparables to be used should be in the same market region. I'm assuming a vacancy factor of 7.5% versus the assessor's 4.7%. I would ask you to flip to page 17, appendix 7. Winnipeg as a whole in the year 2020 had a overall vacancy rate of 3.8%. This building from a CMHC point of view, and I did point out to you that there was an agreement to sort of move this market area for the assessment or for the city's purposes, encapsulate this area so we can get some property tax grant credits. We artificially sort of moved it into the downtown coordinate. That's now we're paying the piper in terms of how you assess it, you know, using the model. But in the these two buildings fall in CMHC's area, which is similar to that 167 zone, a little piece of land that I showed you. It falls within CMHC's West Broadway area. The vacancy rate in 2020 was 7.5%. In terms of operating expenses, again, I used the average operating expenses from 320 to come up with my total expenses. I think it's similar to the assessors. I'll just take a fast look. Yeah, the assessor was 1,153,000. I'm using based on my using the 320 actuals, I came up with 1,006,000, so slightly less than the assessors. In terms of the capitalization rate from the assessors, again, I added a full 1% or 100 basis point or 1% in the cap rate. On the basis that the average capitalization rates from the cities as well as those 3 or 4 other outside real estate firms said the average is 5.25% cap rates. I put forth to you that this building is a special purpose building that restricts its ability to go after the general market, and it's got less amenities. That an investor looking to buy this building would add a factor to the cap rate due to those features, as well as, again, the building is still in its infancy in terms of lease up and hasn't achieved its full occupancy at that period of time. An investor would penalize the cap rate, increase it slightly to assume that risk until this specific building has proven itself in terms of operating expenses and the rents that it will stabilize that. So I'm using 5.4%. The result market value, this is before I made the correction. I'm asking is that the market value should be 18,640,000 versus the assessor's 26,210. Overall, I'm suggesting that the market value should be 19,269,000. That's before the adjustment for the unoccupied space. Do you want me to give you wait to the rebuttal just to tell you the change then, or?
You've been dealing with the rebuttal all along. If it's okay, I think what you'll do is go through your rebuttal now. We'll deal with the questions all at once rather than going back and forth, since you're most of the way through the rebuttal already.
If you go to page 3 of my rebuttal documentation, at the bottom right-hand corner, in terms of, I used the same figures as what I submitted to begin with. I only made a change in the value of the commercial component. And what I did do there is, I had mentioned to you, 2 of the commercial units are unoccupied and have not been improved yet to be able to even get an occupancy permit. I used an average cost of $138 per square foot to improve that area. Those 2 areas add up to $1,593. So I'm asking, just as what the assessment department has used the previous assessment, I deduct off the commercial component because the value is not there yet. And that works out to $219,000. So the value of the commercial component then should be reduced to just over $400,000. That brings the overall assessment down to $19,050,000 and $164. So that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Deitchen. And as I indicated, because Mr. Badger dealt with a lot of the information or all the information in his rebuttal at the same time, let's deal with the questions on both his presentation and the rebuttal. That's acceptable?
Yeah, not a problem. So just quick further, I believe it's page 9. To come up with the average monthly rent, you use 320 colonies. 320 colony run in a for-profit manner.
It's not run in a for-profit manner, but over 50% of the units are run at market rents. So we try to get as much as there's no limitation imposed on us to rent them for as high as, for 50% of units as high as we can. And that's what sets the rate for the affordable units. We get outside grants that bridge the market rates to what the rates that we're going to be allowing people to move in. So there'll be a discount based on their income, but we get outside grants to cover that. So when I say that I'm using the market rates from the comments, the 320 project, the rents those are rents that we're going there and trying to achieve as high a rent we can, and within the limitations of rent controls, we're not exempt. Those are market rents. In our opinion, those are the market rents for the area.
Okay, thanks. And then just one more, just in regards to your rebuttal, you're right, we didn't have the commercial reduction. So hobbyism didn't move in until November 15, 2022. So that premise is fine from a eligibility for rent standpoint. Can you just look at our brief quick and let us know which 2 of these 3 premises aren't fit up yet, so we could make a deduction for you, because you're right, it should be there.
Okay, when you got in, I give this square footage, the 2 smaller ones. It's basically the 2 smaller ones.
Okay, that's page 4 of ours. So I know we use 120 square foot, like a fit up allowance. So I just want to make that recommendation to reduce. So just let me do the calculation here quick. Sorry,
yeah, it'll be the middle one is rented out.
okay, perfect. So that's 2,238 square foot unfinished times 120, that's 268,560. So then we'll make a recommendation for the commercial to be reduced to 522,000 rounded. Based on the unfinished, it should have rolled forward. And I've seen permits and doing the review here quickly showing that there is the 1 tenant's in, but we don't have anything for the other 2. So what's being presented by the applicant does check out and should be reflected in the slight reduction.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
Just a question for the assessor then. Just to confirm then what the overall total recommendation is, the total that you recommend for class 60 and for the residential 20.
Yeah, just give me 1 second here. So the total value will be 24,800,000.
Okay, thank you. And for the applicant, a question for the applicant. Your request as a total valuation is 19,050,164.
Yes,
Is that correct? Okay.
that's correct.
Thank you
yes.
very much for your presentation. That's all my questions.
I have one question as well, and then we'll deal with summaries. The Downtown Commons project that you're using as a sister and a rent comparable, what is the suite split at 320 Colony for the average rents? Is it similar to the 290 or is it similar to the 505 St. Mary 290 Colony address, or?
There's less ones and twos. If anything, I should have adjusted their average rent down because they have larger suites. So yeah, the overall average is larger for them. It's a more efficient building and everything.
Okay,
But I didn't go in, after the fact, I didn't. It's too late now, but I got into the details of everything.
okay, thank you. That was my only question. And I know Mr. Deitch and Ms. Brokus, you had mentioned the possibility of a summary with respect to the property at 505 St. Mary.
Can I represent?
Sure, what's up?
I just, in the rebuttal, I just didn't, I was just pulling from, I didn't finish.
Oh, I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's very, very, very simple. All the only thing I just want to emphasize is there seems to be an error. The assessors acknowledge it already, but I did submit comparables for commercial leases down there, and they're all within the West End area. And that's how I came up with my $15 a square foot. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay.
I think they acknowledge that this building does sit within this area, market area. Okay, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Deitchen, Mr. Brokus, any summary?
Yeah, just a quick summary. Valuing the property as what a knowledgeable vendor and purchaser would agree to the price on a for-profit basis. The building was built $22.6 million. It doesn't even include the price of the land, the value of the land it sits on. You know, it's in market region 167. That market region has been absorbed actually for 2023 to market region 8, which is encompassing the downtown area. We're not really looking at it from that standpoint. We're looking at the proximity of similar high-rise, newer or refinished properties. We've got some comparables that support our rents. We feel our valuation is sound in consideration of the permit and probable land value. That's my summation.
Thank you. And Mr. Badger, any summary?
By summary, I just want to deal with the business about the construction cost versus the market value based on the income approach, the gap. I think I worked for about 30 years in the downtown core for two of the major redevelopment authorities downtown, the North Portage, the Forks, and the university. It's all my career. all our projects cost more money than what the income value is. But it's no different than any other downtown type of project. Look at North Portage, the arena was it about one, I think it was $120 million. The assessment ended, based on the income project, ended up being like 20 million. That's just a fact of life. But if someone's gonna go and buy it now, they'll buy it on the income approach, they're not gonna buy it on the replacement cost approach. And the only way we've bridged this is by getting all these various grants, creative grants. So I just want to put that to bed, that we're supposed to be dealing with the income approach. So that shouldn't be relevant. The biggest problem here I see this, unfortunately, the assessment department is utilizing a model-driven approach without looking at the specifics of the project. They're obligated, if there's an appeal, they're obligated to look at the specifics of the project, okay? Right within the city of Winnipeg's assessment department's guidelines, it talks that there's variable attributes, size of the units, the market area, et cetera, all these things I pointed out. So it's okay if the model will spend out the average figures, but then you have to make adjustments to that I don't see have taken place here. And that's one reason why I have a big gap. The biggest reason why we have a big problem in here is we went out there to get a tax credit and asked the city, on your drawings, you just show this little loop in here so we can get some property tax benefits on one of the projects that we built. And unfortunately, that put us in your downtown zone, and we're in your downtown zone, your assessment model says, it's downtown. We're mixed up with all the new apartment buildings behind the arena, all this higher, expensive developments down here in the exchange area. So unfortunately, we got captured, we got caught up in a zone that we're really not in. So site specific would say, we're in the West End, take a look at it. There's CMHC's figures for vacancy. Take those things into consideration, cap rates, take consideration this market. We're in the West End. West End's different. Geez, I was just listening to the paper. I'm sorry, I'm out of town, but they're running around here spraying people with bear spray. It's all when I was right up the front door of these buildings. It's a different market than downtown and central area. So for lack of comparables, I used a project and I used the market rates from that project, which is located half a block down, like 1 minute away. And those are the real rents. And the assessment on that building was put in place before we made the adjustment to your map. The assessment on that building has always been quite accurate. We've never appealed it. This one here, I know we're not supposed to be talking about assessed values, but if I look at the income that you're using for that building, you're using the income that I'm proposing here in your assessment to come up with the assessment of that building down there, which is just next door. But in here, because the zones changed, we're in the downtown zone, and that's how we got captured. So I'm basically going back and saying, site specific, look at the factors, look at the comparable rents that we gave you, look at the adjustments to the vacancy rate from CMHC, look at the cap rates. It's a new building, it hasn't proven its occupancy level, and it's built special purpose. It's going to have limit marketability in the future to investors, and that would affect the cap rate. So that's my summation.
Thank you. That will conclude this matter, and we will move on to the next property at 361 Burnell, number. See what number that is on the docket. 7.
What was your name again, sir?
Alan Roberts.
Please stand in for a second, and I will very quickly. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Alan Roberts.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you, Mr. Deitch, and if we can turn please to this matter, 361 Burnell Street. If you can lead us through your presentation, please.
Yeah, so it's file number 224829, roll number 1309907 1975. Address is 361 Burnell Street. Roll year is 2021, reference date April 1st, 2018. Assessed value is at $3,616,000. It's one building, 3 stories high, built in 2020, with 18 suites and 19 outdoor parking stalls. Our income value summary on page 3 shows that it has 4 1-bedrooms and 14 2-bedrooms, sorry, for 18 units at a total of 1,412.01. And that is an override rent value factored back. Continuing on to the gross effective income is 297,064. Expenses at 116,271. At a cap rate of 5%, brings the value to $3,616,000. Page 4 is the rent comparables. I didn't put weight on them. They're just there for reference. Try to find some similar suite mixes, newer builds. And you can see it falls near the low end of the range of average monthly rent per unit. Page 5 is the cap rate evidence. Again, you can see for the multifamily section, it ranges from around 4% to 5%. Page 6 is the cap rate table, showing our model cap rates. Page 7 is the Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. Page 8 is just a little description of the property. You can see that it says premium built apartment with focus on eco-sensibility. See high ceilings with large windows. You can see some higher end finishes, 10-foot ceilings. Then page 9 and forward are just some pictures of the exterior and interior of the building. Excuse me. And that is my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Questions of the assessor?
So do I get an opportunity to critique? Is that?
If you've got any questions about the assessment department's presentation, then this time to ask you, you'll certainly get a chance to make your own presentation and offer your own evidence with respect to this property for a reference date on this matter. But if you've got specific questions or questions relating to the valuation that they've presented on, now's your opportunity.
Thank you. My apologies for my newness to this process. This is the first time I've been involved in one of these. I appreciate the kudos that you provided for our facility. We did our best to build an alternative for the housing that's available now in that area. It's core area. We spoke with quite a number of residents there that were looking for a newer place to live without having to move too far from the area itself. They like living in the area and wish to continue to do so, but we're hoping to find something newer to make it a little more comfortable than the drafty houses with poor plumbing that were built typically 100 years ago when most of the area was constructed. Comments regarding the Board of Revision summary document, is that?
It's for question, if you've got some questions for clarification or with respect to what the assessment department has presented. If there's something that you disagree with that's not in your presentation, you can ask the questions with respect to that. But you will get an opportunity to make your presentation after the questions have been asked. If there's questions, for example, about the valuation, the capitalization rate, if there's questions about comparable rents, things like that.
Okay. The only items that I should make mention of that, well, are blank in your summary relate to the leasable area that's available in the building. There is 15,680 square feet of leasable space. The basement is devoid of plumbing or like toilets or water supply other than for servicing the mechanical room. And storage lockers there, and that's all.
If I can interrupt again here, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth and I'm not trying to stop your
Please do.
presentation. A way to ask that, you're going to get an opportunity, as I said, to make your presentation, but you might want to ask to the assessment department, were you aware that the basements are unfinished and should lead to a reduction in the square footage that you've noted? Something like that.
Okay. That's suitable. So should I begin with the presentation?
No, we now, if that's the limit of your questions, then I'll ask the other panel members if they've got questions with respect to the presentation that's been made. Ms. Anderson, have you got any questions of the Mr. Deitchen?
Yes, in regards to the rent rate that you've used to generate the assessment, you indicated it was an override. So I'm wondering why the decision to override what would be a model generated rent?
The comps in the area aren't the best, so we use the actuals, the current actuals, and then factor them back.
Okay, thank you for that. My other question then is just in regards to something that the applicant mentioned in regards to the basement area. Is there an assessment relative to that basement area?
I would have to double check.
The value is just generated from the amount of units we have on record, finished units, broken up by unit type, and then we've applied a rent, which is based on the actuals reported factor back as per rent control to try and get an idea of how the market's been increasing over the years. So I don't think rent really is in dispute. Just looking at the applicant's brief, there's other factors. But we looked at the actuals because we don't want to set it too high, set it too low, maybe based on comps that aren't the best for the area. Because if the property is kind of onto its own, the area that it's in, the model could be skewed if we're not careful. So we actually look at what they collect when we're putting new properties on the roll and then bring them back based on actuals, provided they're for-profit enterprises, of course.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. That's all my questions.
Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. So Mr. Roberts, if you could make your presentation, please.
It would be nice if it were for profit. If it is for profit, that remains to be seen. We have no objection to the revenue side of the predictions that you made in your valuation. It's in line with our own, so that side of it is fairly simple to relate to. My main concern over the valuation is on the expenses side, which provide no detail at all, other than to give a gross approximation of the proportionality between expenses and revenues. And that from an analytical standpoint is useless. I can't comment on it because all I can really say is that it's not reasonable. Because I know that it includes no interest. Value or does not reflect upon the level of interest rates at the time it was created. It also does not identify how much tax has been included as an expense in the analysis. I have to think that it is probably close to being the average of, I have to think, the average of the apartment buildings in the area, in other words, in the core area, in other words, north of Portage, south of Notre Dame, and within reasonable transportation distance of our own. If that is the case, it is not accurate because the property taxes in that area are substantially less than what you are expecting us to pay. That is detailed in one of the documents that I submitted, being a one-page summary of the alternate taxes paid, assessments and taxes paid by about 9 other apartment buildings.
Okay, Mr. Roberts, I'm going to stop you there. We're not going to consider, this board does not consider other assessments. Were mandated by court rulings that we're not allowed to consider comparable assessments. It's not considered evidence for our.
Even assessments done by the city of Winnipeg?
Yes.
Really?
Because those assessments could be wrong.
All of them.
We're mandated by the Superior Courts that we are not to consider other assessments. And in the preamble that I said that evidence of other assessments or other assessments are not considered as evidence for this board's determination.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that because that is rather a key ingredient in my comments. I will then just go forward with the presentation that I have prepared.
Thank you.
The construction did not take place, was not completed in 2020. In fact, the building was not even fully enclosed in 2020. It was still without heat, power, anything of that nature. And windows, doors, that kind of thing had yet to go in. It was not completed until August 1st of 2021 when we received a occupancy permit for 100% of the units. We were able to achieve 15% occupancy by the end of the year, by the end of December of 2021, but it did not achieve 90% occupancy, and I'll use that 90% occupancy as a marker point because really until a new building, a new apartment reaches 90% occupancy, it is not covering its costs, regardless of what the tax rate is, until it reaches that level. We reached that level on July 1st of 2022. I would appreciate consideration of relief from property tax until July 1st of 2022. If that is within your purview, I don't know. We began construction approximately 3 weeks before the onset of COVID-19. And then proceeded to watch their costs escalate dramatically as we went stage by stage. Even the foundations were more expensive than we had expected, just because the contractor had to shut down for a week because a couple of his people had not complied with the COVID restraints, distancing and so on. Prior to the off our site, like. Anyway, he charged us for that additional delay of time, and that was just the beginning. And the total of the COVID impact was approximately 4 months of duration, construction duration, and approximately 40% of capital cost, or at least estimated capital cost prior to the beginning of construction. We'll back up, both the contractors and material suppliers were able to capitalize on our misfortune, and now it appears that the city of Winnipeg is bent on doing the same. If successful in this effort to penalize our company with taxes that are between 67% and 96% higher than the Grace apartment building, which is 2 blocks from ours, and completed 1 year prior to ours going into construction. So I mean, it's the same vintage. It's not, there isn't a time difference issue there. Just the difference in tax being applied, operating tax. It's quite a different thing if I'm talking about a capital cost, which is a one-time only cost. This is an ongoing annual cost, which essentially is going to make us uncompetitive with all of the other apartment buildings in the area. The Grace is 1 year older and continues to be heavily subsidized by the province. $2.8 million of subsidy went into that to turn it into a co-op, and approximately 50% of its units are subsidized for affordable housing. The other 50% are essentially owned by the tenants, and rent is paid in addition, and common elements are paid in addition. But the cost for the affordable units is and the tax paid on those affordable units is our biggest concern. It will severely threaten our ability to compete with our other apartments. It also drastically reduces our market value. That difference in tax amounts to approximately $25,000 per year. And if you use a 5% cap rate, and I'll debate that one a little bit further later, but at $25,000 on a 5% cap rate, that's $500,000 in the value of my property. And that needs to be, if they're going to insist on charging that tax, that has to come off of the valuation of the property, because it's pretty direct. This reduces the market value of the business approximately $500,000 based on a 5% cap rate. This is a high penalty for the city to add to our past misfortune of having constructed during the pandemic. Much of this damage can be arrested by supplementing the information provided in the Board of Revision summary. Information provided on page number, and I'll comment on this on a page-by-page basis. Page number 1, construction began in March 20th, which I mentioned, March 2020, which I had mentioned, and an occupancy permit obtained in August 1st, 21. The leasable area of the building is 15,680 square feet, excluding the basement, which has no leasable area, and excluding the lobby, which is only 10 square foot difference per unit anyway. So that the average unit size is 870 square feet. If you look at the comparables that were identified and used as a basis for valuation of our property. Let me open this up. The can be seen from the comparable assessment page in M&R Development's comparison sheet dated 14th of December 22. That the city of Winnipeg objective is to make our annual tax $1,014 to $1,359 per unit, i.e. $18,252 to $24,406 per year, higher than the average tax paid by our competitors. So it's in that $25,000 range. The expense rate used in compiling the expenses to arrive at the net revenues in the capitalization value is not itemized and is approximated by use of a percentage of revenues. It ignores the largest variable in the expenses, interest cost, totally. That's by, I can understand why it is done. I mean, it makes the analysis a whole lot simpler, but the problem is it also has the corollary of distorting the value of the numbers it creates, or that it's used to create. Avoids providing a breakdown of the other costs by a crude rule of thumb correlation between income and expense, where expenses equals 39.14% of income, making it impossible to identify the impact of the major expenses. Page number 4. This page shows the comparable floor areas of each of the city of Winnipeg's comparable apartments. Though all 4 of the comparables are larger, the unit size of the comparables is 274 square feet larger, another 25% larger than the average unit size in 361 Burnell. So, I mean, it's hardly equivalent when you've got comparing our apartments with something that's 1.25 the size, and it's also dissociated itself from my perspective by not being in a similar rent value area. In other words, apartments of any quality, or well, there aren't apartments of the same quality in the core area, but apartments in different areas. In other words, the Osborne district, virtually everywhere inside the core area, have a higher income expectation than those within the core area. So, I mean, you cannot do a valuation of a block that's inside the core area using comparables that are outside of the core area. This evaluation tries to do just that. It compares us with units that are on the east side of the Red River, north end of the city, higher income area, with compares us with apartments on River Avenue, which is, I mean, at least 50% higher in rental rates than our area. If you look at them, every single comparable that they have used is definitely not comparable, is my point. It should be noted that 3 out of the 4 buildings listed in the capitalization rate on page 5 were sales that took place 5 to 7 years ago. Capitalization rates are based on interest on the after interest value. In other words, what people are willing to pay for a property. Properties 5 to 7 years ago do not have the interest rates that are present today. I mean, we had our interest rates now are somewhere between 6 and 10 times what they were then. So, I mean, a capitalization rate that is based on essentially does not consider or is not adjusted to reflect interest rates is distortionary in excess and to in the extreme. That was item number 5. On page number 5. I'll back up to page number 3. The expense rate is not itemized and is approximated by use of a percentage of revenues. It ignores the largest variable in the expense, which is interest costs, and avoids providing a breakdown of the other costs by use of crude rule of thumb correlation. I explained that adequately, I think, already. It can be seen from the comparable assessments page and M&R developments comparison sheet dated 14th of December. It makes annual tax 1,000, shows annual tax 1,000 to 1,359 per unit. In other words, 18,252 to 24,462 are higher than the average tax paid by our competitors. This page shows the page number 4 shows the comparable floor areas of each of the city of Winnipeg's comparable units. I've discussed that. The units discussed in pages 2 and 4 above are listed on page 5. In addition to being larger apartments in those areas other than Burnell, where Burnell is located, they are also located in much higher income rent districts, which I've discussed already as well. The method of appraisal based on sale value without inclusion of the prevailing interest rates in the analysis severely distorts the valuation of the property, and in so doing distorts the sustainable level of property tax that can be levied on rental properties such as 361 Burnell. Because of this method of analysis, we request that the use of the cap rate of 6% be used, or some other higher number that provides some reflection on what impact the interest rate change in interest rates has had on the valuation of these properties. Four similar apartments in our local area have been appraised by the city of Winnipeg, served in basis.
Again, Mr. Roberts, comparisons of other appraisals are not going to be considered as evidence by the mortgage.
That was the essence of my summary, if you will, or comparison, if you will. There was in the document that I submitted after receipt of the documents from like the Board of Revision summary that provided a significant amount of detail beyond what is in that response. Beyond what's in that summary response, specifically the income and expense summary that I provided, which I use to value our business, our property. It came up with a remarkably similar annual net revenue, but once you add the distorted operating costs, the operating costs provided by you, by the city of Winnipeg, were different from ours by a factor of $92,000. That $92,000 was the interest that we pay on a mortgage. And again, it does not reflect like any business that buys a building of this type as a revenue property does so using a mortgage, and without being able to include the value, or I should say the operating cost of that mortgage, then I don't know how you come up with the net revenue. You don't come up with a rational net revenue, let's put it that way. That was really the essence of what I had in my response to to the materials that I received from the Board of Review.
Thank you. Then now the both the assessors and the panel members will have a chance to ask you questions for clarification. Mr. Deitchen or Mr. Barocas, any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Are you aware for appraisal purposes, mortgage interest is not included in calculating the expenses and NOI?
Yes, and I appreciate your dilemma in not being, in being told that being without the interest rates is not in anybody's best interest, yours or mine. My concern is that it distorts the appraisal, and it distorts the value of the property, and therefore it distorts the property tax that you're trying to calculate for use or application in my instance. And so I really cannot tell you what I think the appropriate property tax should be, but I can relate and direct you towards the evidence you have created in evaluating the alternates. That is really the only rational basis of analyzing how much to charge me or charge 361 Burnell. It's to leave me in a position where I am allowed to compete with all the rest. To throw me into a different category that's got almost double the property tax compared to all my competitors is well, selfish. No, it's perhaps from your perspective, but it's unfair in the extreme.
And I should correct you here. You mentioned a few times that this is a property tax. What this board's function is to come up with an assessed value. The taxation will be dealt with through the mill rate and through the committee and through the city of Winnipeg. This is just, and it will be based on the assessed value, but what we're dealing with here is not the taxation amounts, but the assessed value. There is a relationship.
Directly correlate.
There is a correlation, there is a relationship, yes, but just for clarification purposes.
I appreciate your making that separation. So resolving my dilemma is not going to be an easy job for you. I understand that. And I look forward to an opportunity to discuss it with you further.
Mr. Deitchen, any more questions? Mr. Barocas?
Okay, and then I guess continuing on from that, just to be fair, would you agree that removing the mortgage interest would bring the NOI to roughly 202,851, approximately 30,000 less than what we have on file?
Restate that a little more slowly, please.
Um,
NLI is what?
So I guess just going on from my last question, like to be fair, removing the mortgage interest of 95,000 from the expenses would bring the NOI to approximately 202,851. Is that correct?
$851. Well, removing the I don't know what you called it, but the NOI from 95,000.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the net operating income, the net revenue would be up to 202,851 then if we remove the mortgage interest.
You removed the mortgage interest, which was 91,000.
95,100.
Okay, you probably got it right in front of you. You're right, 95,100. Yes, that is probably the biggest difference right there.
Okay, no further questions.
That will offset the Well, the damage done by your proportionality assumption of, what is it, 39% of revenues? For us anyway, that will do it. We had to put in a lot of additional equity. But that, I mean, that offsets the actual costs that we incurred in 2021, 22 in that fiscal year.
Thank you. Mr. McIntyre, do you have any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions, so that concludes this matter. We'll go on to the final matter on the docket, and that is again 361 Burnell Street with a reference date of April 1st, 2021. It's the next in the series of the properties.
Those two files differ only in the amount or the valuation placed on the property.
Yes, a lot of the information will be the same, given the construction and given
Yeah.
some of the others. So, but there's a difference in reference dates as to the valuation. So the reference date for this one is now the April 1st of 2021.
Okay, so if the reference then for the other one was April 1st of 2020,
2018.
2018.
Yes, with respect to taxes then. So, sorry, with respect to assessment, then I'm doing it. I apologize. So this will be the current cycle, which will go till the next assessment, which will be effective in 2023.
Okay, well, that. Then this should apply to like the adjusted tax. In other words, the tax in line with, well, roughly $27,000 a year for us, which puts us in a comparable situation with our competitors, would be an acceptable tax level to go forward with to 2023.
And what, again, what we'll do is we'll have the assessment and taxation department, the assessors give their presentation. I'm assuming that a lot of the information will be the same as a lot of your information will be the same, and we can apply that to this particular presentation as well. But because of the different assessment years, we have to have two separate determinations made. So, and for the record, we'll have the separation done like that. Fair enough?
That sounds
Okay, then Mr. Deitchen, could you lead us through, please, the last matter on the list?
Yep. So it's file number 224830, roll number 13099071975, and again it's 361 Burnell Street. Roll year is 2023, reference date is April 1st, 2021, and I do have a recommendation for this year using our NOI of 184,919 and increasing the cap to 4.75%. That brings the value to $3,893,000.
So, Mr. Roberts, what the recommendation is to increase the capitalization rate with the same net operating income for a change in valuation, a reduction in value from the $4,109,000 to $383,000. If that's acceptable for you, then that's great. We can continue on with the presentation.
let me get a clearer picture of that first. This is, can you restate that basis again?
Perhaps what I should do, so I'm not giving the evidence, that I should have Mr. Deitchen or Mr. Barocas restate the amounts and the effect on the total valuation.
Okay, yeah, we're just keeping our NOI of net operating income of 184,919, and then increasing the cap rate from 4.5% to 4.75%. And that changes the value from 4,109,000 to 3,893,000.
We had provided an analysis that provided that based on our net revenue calculation, we could justify a capital value of $2,155,000. That was using that $92,500 interest as a deduction from our revenues to arrive at the cap value. And that was using a 5% cap rate. I have suggested that maybe it should be a 6% cap rate, which, given that it's in inversion analysis, I mean, it brings down our capital value to, I didn't bring it.
Perhaps if there isn't agreement, then perhaps what Mr. Deitchen can do is continue on with his presentation. And then you'll have a chance to make your presentation to argue for or to present evidence with respect to the necessity for a higher cap rate for this property. Okay, good. Mr. Deitchen?
Yeah, most of the information is pretty much the same, just a different reference date. The average monthly rent is $1,503.33, and again, it was using the actuals factored back. Our comparables again we didn't put too much weight on those. We have the cap rate evidence on page 5 and 6, and again the pictures of the property from 9 to 14, and that is my evidence.
Thank you. Mr. Roberts, do you have questions for the assessor?
No, he's got a better handle on the numbers than I have, so he knows my objective. He recognizes, I think, the need to allow me to remain competitive, or at least in the same ballpark somewhere with other apartment blocks. But that last comment, well,
if you don't have any questions, then I'm going to ask the panel members to have questions, and then we can get to your presentation.
okay.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Anderson, have you any questions?
Just in regards to the recommended cap rate and to derive your recommendation, you suggest increasing the cap rate to 4.75%. That is based on what? Can you explain why you're suggesting a 0.25% increase rather than going to 5%?
Well, 2390 McPhillips on page 5. That's our best comparator in terms of a newer build. Now it's not in a neighborhood that's, I would say, comparable. One is in the center of the city, one is towards the north perimeter. You know, so in absence of any other sale, that's what we went to. Last time it was 5. There's been a compression in cap rates. 4.75 is where we made our recommendation.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks for your presentation. Those are all my questions.
Mr. McIntyre?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. So, Mr. Roberts, the floor is yours for your presentation with respect to this reference date for 361 Burnell.
Items that may impact your assessment. The pictures that were attached to the back end of the document that you submitted were all from unit 206, which just happens to be the largest unit in the entire building, and just happens to be the only furnished unit in the entire building. We provided the furnishings just to see what impact that might have on market value or like rental value. We find that, well, it puts us in a better position if we're willing to rent it on a short-term basis. We're still debating the merit of that, especially in light of the provinces and cities concerns over equity with other short-term alternatives, hotels, I guess, and so on. So that one will be left in, that decision of ours will be left in abeyance until that is resolved within the province. That was the only thing that comes to mind with regard to things that remain missing. I still believe that based on the numbers that you have generated thus far for us, a cap rate of 6% is far more equitable from a valuation for tax standpoint than, in other words, provides a far more appropriate valuation for tax standpoint than something less than 5% I used in the net value calculation, which I provided to you, knowing that knowing only that you would, well, that was closer to being your norm. From a buyer's standpoint, it's really an interest rate driven decision, what you're willing to accept as net revenues, and I just need to encourage you to recognize the distortion that you bring into the use of multipliers, the cap rates, when you have wildly fluctuating interest rates that we have seen over the past 12 months, and hopefully will continue to fluctuate in the other direction. But nonetheless, it's you're carrying a very tippy load. You got an unbalanced hay racket for those of you who are farmers. If you're going around a corner. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Deitchen, Ms. Brokus, any questions?
No, just our comments and questions from last one carryover. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McIntyre, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
And Ms. Anderson?
I have no questions, thank you.
And I have no questions. Is there a necessity, Mr. Deitchen, is there a necessity for a summary?
No, thank you.
Mr. Roberts, would you like to summarize your position? You don't have to, but you have the opportunity here if you'd like to.
I think I've managed to get the points that I thought needed to be getting made across. And there really isn't additional information or more information that I have available to share with you. The only thing that still remains outside the decision making range is the initiation of a tax date. I have indicated in the write-ups that I've submitted to you that 90% occupancy is really the borderline between private apartment block having any net revenue and having negative net revenue. And if you can delay the onset of the tax adjustment in tax, currently we're paying what the tax was before we started construction. If maybe I'm wrong with that, our treasurer wasn't in town the last couple of weeks. But if that onset of the new tax rate can be delayed until July 1st of 2022, that would help us a great deal.
Thank you very much. We have now heard all the items scheduled and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks.